Over these last days, we've been exploring the meaning of the words warrior, samurai, gladiator, Viking, and all of these titles imply combativeness. But what happens when we arrive at the place where we have no fight left in us, where we do not any longer consider life as an arena and all and everything that comes along as a combatant that has to be conquered? What happens to the meaning of these words for us? There's a reminder of an old story. That story set in the time long ago when the shoguns ruled in the land of the rising sun. And on an occasion, the shogun of the day was given as a gift by a ruler of another empire a great, sleek, fierce, magnificent tiger. Now the shogun loved to show off this creature, and he often invited people after a reception to come out to the place in which the tiger was kept. They would gather around the enclosure while this magnificent beast paced back and forth. Now there was an occasion when amongst the guests who were gathered was the great samurai swordsman Yagyu. He was called Lord Yagyu because of the prowess of his swordsmanship. And also amongst the guests was the great Zen master Hakuin, Master Hakuin. Now, as they were standing together outside the enclosure, the shogun turned to Lord Yagyu and he said, "I believe in your school of swordsmanship, that you have trained your mind to such a degree that you can live in a state without fear of death, making you invincible, in fact, able to face and conquer any combatant without even using your sword." And Lord Yagyu agreed that this was indeed the case. So the shogun said to Lord Yagyu, "Well, please, would you care to demonstrate your art to us?" So with that, Lord Yagyu was escorted over to the gate of the enclosure, and when it was opened, he had no choice but to step inside. Not only did he have to prove himself, but he could not disobey the order of his shogun. So stepping inside the enclosure with the fierce tiger pacing back and forth, but as soon as Lord Yagyu stepped into the arena, the tiger stopped, warily looking at the person who had entered the enclosure. But Lord Yagyu fixed his eyes on the tiger, who then continued its pacing, looking carefully at this intruder. But Lord Yagyu stepped, pace by pace, into the enclosure so that the tiger had to back until it finally reached the limits of where it could move, and so it set itself in a position to strike. But Lord Yagyu was aware of every move, and just as the tiger was about to pounce, he took out his iron fan and slapped it across the tiger's nose, so that the tiger was completely discombobulated, so to speak, and cowered off in a corner, allowing Lord Yagyu to go out of the arena. The shogun was greatly impressed with this, and he turned to Master Hakyuin, who was standing beside him. "You see what an amazing display of the power of mind and mastership, able to conquer a fierce beast." Master Hakyuin said, "It was okay." Shogun said, "What do you mean it was just okay? That was an amazing demonstration of the power of mind." Look, Master Hakyuin just shrugged his shoulders. "Well," the shogun said to Master Hakyuin, "I believe that in your school of teaching you also arrive at a place of fearlessness, no longer fearing death." "Yes," said Master Hakyuin, "but our ways are somewhat different to those of those who are masters of the sword." "Well, perhaps you'd like to demonstrate to us," said the shogun to Master Hakyuin. Now Master Hakyuin, being the Zen master that he was, he had never practiced the martial arts, but many of his students had been swordsmen, even Lord Yagyu himself. So, spitting in his hands, Master Hakyuin went over to the gate of the enclosure, and it was opened in front of him. He entered the enclosure, the tiger now pacing warily back and forth. After one encounter, it was even more wary than before. But Master Hakyuin stood inside the gate of the enclosure, not eyeballing the tiger as Lord Yagyu had done, but his gaze and his presence seemed to embrace and envelop not only the enclosure, but all its surroundings. At that moment, the tiger approached Master Hakyuin, and Master Hakyuin merely held out his hand for the tiger to sniff. After this, Master Hakyuin was able to fondle the tiger behind its ears, and it lay down and purred like a kitten. What is the meaning of the titles warrior, samurai, gladiator, Viking, when we arrive at that place where life is no longer an arena? What is the meaning of these words for you now, in the place that you are? Maybe with no fight left in you, may be experiencing, but there is no combatant. Life is no longer an arena. How would you express the meaning of these words now, in the place that you rest? Warrior, gladiator, samurai, swordsman, Viking. What's your relationship with life now?
With a warrior, there's always an antagonism and opposition, and with a master, it's an embracing, and everything is part of it. So there's no opposition or no fight.
No. But do we not still have the attributes of the warrior, the samurai, the Viking, the swordsman? The alertness, the presence, the attention that we now give to every single moment of life, effortlessly, keeping attention, being present, intensely present. Isn't that being the warrior? Isn't that being the samurai? So what's the meaning of these words for us now? In this place where we find ourselves so intensely present without that combativeness, can we still call ourselves the warrior, samurai? Indeed we can. What is life for us now? What does it mean when Zen Master Hakuin stood inside the enclosure? The fierce tiger was pacing back and forth in front of him. What is the place that we're at now? Still the warrior, still the gladiator, still the samurai. And yet with no fight, no combativeness. Where are we now?
In a stage of peace.